Today, I'd like to talk about an idea that has shaped the lives of many throughout history, an idea that can guide us through the complexities of our modern world with a sense of calm and purpose. This idea, rooted in the philosophy of Stoicism, is known as the dichotomy of control. It's a principle that holds the key to living a life of peace, contentment, and resilience. It teaches us to distinguish between what is within our power to control and what is not, and to align our energy accordingly. Now, let's begin by reflecting on a simple yet profound question. How often do we find ourselves consumed by things we have no power over? Think about the last time you were stressed or anxious. Perhaps it was a difficult conversation, a missed opportunity, or an unexpected event that disrupted your plans. In that moment, you might have felt frustrated, helpless, or even angry. But did that feeling change the situation? Probably not. It's at times like these that the dichotomy of control becomes essential. This concept was a central tenet of Stoic philosophy, particularly emphasized by Epictetus, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers. The idea is simple but transformative. In life, there are two categories of things we can control and things we cannot. The challenge is learning to recognize which is which, and directing our attention and energy towards the former, while letting go of the latter. So, let's break this down further. What are the things we can control? According to Stoic thought, the things that lie within our control are our own thoughts, actions, and intentions. That's it. These are the aspects of our lives that we have complete authority over. We decide how we respond to situations, what attitude we adopt, and what actions we take. Whether we face a challenging task, a tough conversation, or a personal setback, we always have the power to control our own response. On the other hand, what are the things we cannot control? Here the list is longer and more varied. External events, other people's opinions, the behavior of those around us, and the outcomes of our efforts. These are all beyond our control. We can influence them to some extent, but we can never fully control them. And yet, these are the things we often find ourselves obsessing over. Whether it's a colleague's criticism, a traffic jam on the way to work, or the uncertainty of an upcoming decision, we expend a lot of emotional and mental energy trying to manage things we simply cannot control. But why is this distinction so important? Because recognizing what we can and cannot control allows us to free ourselves from unnecessary stress. When we invest time and energy into things outside our control, we invite frustration, anxiety, and even despair into our lives. Why? Because no matter how hard we try, we cannot force the world to bend to our will. We cannot make people act the way we want them to. We cannot ensure that every outcome will be favorable. And when we cling to the illusion that we can, we set ourselves up for disappointment. The key lesson here is this: if we focus on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and intentions, we create a space for peace within ourselves. When we let go of our attachment to external outcomes and events, we reduce the mental and emotional clutter that often weighs us down. Instead of worrying about how others will react to our decisions, we can focus on making decisions that align with our values. Instead of stressing over whether a situation will turn out the way we hope, we can focus on how we can prepare and act to the best of our ability. Let me share a practical example to illustrate this point. Imagine you're an athlete training for a big race. You dedicate weeks, even months, to preparing, practicing every day, eating the right foods, getting enough rest. On the day of the race, you give it your all, but as you run, factors outside your control come into play. Maybe the weather is worse than expected. Perhaps another runner accidentally bumps into you, slowing you down. Or maybe you simply have an off day, where despite your best efforts, things don't go as planned. Now, here's where the dichotomy of control comes in. You can't control the weather, the other runners, or even the exact outcome of the race. What you can control, however, is how much effort you put into training and how you respond to the challenges that arise during the race. Do you let these uncontrollable factors frustrate and demoralize you? Or do you focus on doing your best within the circumstances you face? This example can apply to any area of life, whether it's our personal relationships, our careers, or even our day-to-day interactions. The same principle holds true. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. And when we shift our focus to that, we gain a sense of empowerment and clarity. At its core, the dichotomy of control is about acceptance and agency. Acceptance of the fact that there will always be things beyond our control. This is the reality of life. But also, agency in knowing that within that reality, there are things we can control, and these are what truly matter. This is where our power lies, and this is where our efforts should be directed. As we practice this mindset, we begin to experience a profound shift. By releasing our attachment to things we cannot change, we free up mental and emotional energy to invest in the things we can. We become more grounded, more focused, and more at peace with ourselves and the world around us. It's not about being passive or indifferent to life's challenges. Rather, it's about understanding where our true influence lies and using it wisely. So, as you go about your day, I invite you to reflect on the things that have been causing you stress or anxiety. How many of them are truly within your control? Are you worrying about someone else's opinion? Are you frustrated by an outcome you hoped for but didn't achieve? Are you feeling overwhelmed by the unpredictability of the future? If so, take a moment to step back and apply the dichotomy of control. Identify what, if anything, you can do to influence the situation. If there's something you can act on, focus your energy there. If not, practice letting go of the rest. This practice doesn't happen overnight. It requires self-awareness, patience, and commitment. But over time, it leads to a sense of liberation and calm that is unmatched. You start to realize that by focusing on what you can control, you are not only reducing stress, but also gaining more control over your own life, your thoughts, your actions, and ultimately, your happiness. In conclusion, the dichotomy of control offers us a powerful framework for navigating the uncertainties and challenges of life. By understanding the difference between what we can and cannot control, and by focusing our energy on the former, we create a foundation for a more peaceful, purposeful, and fulfilling existence. So, the next time you find yourself caught in a whirlwind of stress or anxiety, remember this Stoic principle: control what you can, and let go of the rest. Now that we've explored the dichotomy of control, it's time to take this understanding a step further. We've learned that our energy is best directed towards the things we can control, specifically our own thoughts, actions, and intentions. But how do we put this into practice in our daily lives? How do we move from understanding this principle to truly focusing on what we can control? This is the second crucial lesson in Stoicism, and an extension of the first. Once we identify what is within our control, we must train our minds to focus relentlessly on these aspects, even when the world around us is chaotic. This shift in focus is where true power lies. Think about it for a moment. How often do we get caught up in the drama of things outside our control? We might worry about what others think of us, stress over the decisions made by our leaders, or feel anxious about things happening in faraway places that we have no influence over. These thoughts can consume us, pulling us away from the things that we do have the power to change. And the result? We become paralyzed, overwhelmed, and disempowered. But here's the transformative idea. When we focus our energy on what we can control, we reclaim our power. We stop being passive observers of life, and instead become active participants, guiding our actions and responses with intention. Let's break this down further. If the only things we can truly control are our thoughts, actions, and intentions, then that's where our focus should lie. In every situation, no matter how difficult or uncertain, we should ask ourselves, what can I do right now? What action can I take that aligns with my values? How can I adjust my thinking to approach this challenge in a constructive way? This shift in focus isn't about ignoring the outside world. On the contrary, it's about engaging with the world more effectively. When we let go of the things we can't control, we free up mental space and emotional energy to direct towards what we can influence. And it's this focus that leads to clarity and purpose. Imagine for a moment, you're faced with a difficult situation at work. Maybe your company is going through a period of uncertainty, and you're unsure about the future. Your mind might race with thoughts about what could happen: layoffs, restructuring, or even the possibility of losing your job. These worries are natural, but they are also largely outside of your control. You can't single-handedly change the company's direction or control decisions made by higher-ups. But what can you control? You can control how you prepare for potential changes. You can control your attitude, your work ethic, and the steps you take to make yourself valuable, not just to your current employer, but in the broader job market. By focusing on what you can control, you take ownership of your situation. Instead of feeling like a helpless victim of circumstances, you start to feel empowered. And that empowerment is crucial because it propels you forward, even in uncertain times. This same principle applies to our relationships. How often do we wish we could control the behavior of others? We might wish that our partner would change, or that our friends would act in a certain way, or that our colleagues would be more cooperative. But the reality is, we cannot control other people. We can't control their thoughts, their feelings, or their actions. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. We can choose to communicate openly, set healthy boundaries, and approach conflicts with empathy and understanding. By focusing on our own actions and responses, we create a ripple effect that can influence others, without trying to control them. Now, let's consider another example, one that resonates with many of us, our personal goals and ambitions. Whether it's improving our health, advancing in our careers, or building better relationships, we often set goals for ourselves that involve outcomes we can't fully control. For instance, you might want to lose a certain amount of weight, or you might want to get promoted at work. These are worthy goals, but if you focus solely on the outcomes, you're setting yourself up for potential disappointment. Why? Because you don't have full control over these outcomes. You can't control how quickly your body responds to exercise, and you can't control the decisions your boss makes. But what can you control? You can control your daily habits, your effort, and your persistence. You can control the decisions you make each day, whether you choose to exercise, eat healthily, and show up consistently at work with a positive attitude. By focusing on these actions rather than the outcome, you increase your chances of success. More importantly, you feel a sense of empowerment because you're actively doing something within your control. In essence, when we focus on what we can control, we shift from passivity to agency. We move away from being reactive to being proactive, and this is where true growth happens, both personally and professionally. But let's be clear, this shift in focus is not always easy. Our minds are naturally drawn to outcomes and external factors. It's easy to get caught up in worries about the future, other people's opinions, or events outside our influence. That's why practicing this focus requires mindfulness and discipline. We must constantly remind ourselves to return to what we can control and let go of the rest. One way to cultivate this mindset is through regular reflection. At the end of each day, take a moment to ask yourself, where did I focus my energy today? Did I spend my time worrying about things I couldn't change? Or did I focus on actions within my control? Over time, this practice of self-reflection helps us become more aware of where we're directing our mental and emotional energy, and it empowers us to make better choices moving forward. Another powerful tool is gratitude. When we focus on what we can control, we begin to appreciate the power we have in shaping our own lives. We realize that while we may not control the outcomes, we do control our effort, our attitude, and our persistence. And for that, we can be grateful. Gratitude shifts our mindset from scarcity, where we focus on what we lack or cannot control, to abundance, where we recognize the opportunities we have to take meaningful action. Now, as we continue to practice this focus on what we can control, something incredible happens. We start to feel a sense of clarity and purpose. Our energy is no longer scattered across things we have no influence over. Instead, it's concentrated on what truly matters, our own growth, actions, and decisions. This clarity allows us to approach life with more intention, and that intention leads to a more fulfilling and purposeful existence. By embracing this mindset, we not only reduce stress and anxiety, but we also enhance our sense of empowerment. We feel more in control of our own lives. We stop waiting for external circumstances to change, and instead, we take ownership of the only thing we truly have control over, ourselves. And in doing so, we move from living passively to living intentionally. So, as you move forward from today, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Where is your energy going? Are you focusing on things outside your control, or are you directing your efforts towards what you can influence? The more you align your focus with what is within your power, the more you'll find yourself living with purpose, peace, and resilience. As we continue our journey through the principles of Stoicism, having explored the dichotomy of control and the importance of focusing on what we can control, we now arrive at a critical third lesson. This is a lesson that truly transforms how we navigate the complexities of life. It teaches us to let go of our attachment to outcomes and instead concentrate on the one thing that remains in our hands, our actions. Today, I want to talk about the profound power of letting go of outcomes. Now, if you followed the first two principles, you might be asking, if I focused on what I can control, isn't the outcome just as important? It's natural to think this way. We live in a results-driven world where success is often measured by outcomes. Whether it's in our professional lives, personal relationships, or even personal goals, we tend to judge ourselves by the results we achieve. But what Stoicism teaches us is that while outcomes matter, we should not tie our sense of self-worth or happiness to them. Why? Because, as we've discussed, the outcomes are not fully within our control. Let's reflect on this for a moment. Think back to the archer metaphor we touched on earlier. The archer can practice day in and day out, perfecting their form, aim, and mental focus. But once the arrow is released, its path is subject to forces beyond the archer's control. Wind, the movement of the target, perhaps even the condition of the bow. Despite the archer's best efforts, these external factors can affect the outcome. In the same way, once we've acted, the result of our efforts is influenced by many things we cannot control: circumstances, other people's decisions, and even random chance. The Stoic perspective encourages us to let go of our attachment to these outcomes. This doesn't mean we don't care about success or that we shouldn't strive to achieve our goals. Rather, it means we should focus on our efforts and intentions and accept that the final result is, in part, beyond our control. We must detach our sense of satisfaction from the result and instead find fulfillment in knowing we've done our best. Let's explore this idea through a simple but powerful story. In ancient times, there was a Stoic philosopher named Epictetus, whom we've referenced before. Born into slavery, Epictetus understood firsthand the limits of control. Despite his circumstances, he focused entirely on what he could influence: his own character, thoughts, and actions. Eventually, he gained his freedom and became a renowned philosopher. One of his most famous teachings is this: make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. This teaching is not just theoretical, it's deeply practical. It reminds us that our responsibility lies in our efforts, not in the outcome of those efforts. We do not control the world's response to us, but we control how we show up in the world. We don't control whether people appreciate our work, but we control the quality and integrity of that work. We don't control whether our plans succeed, but we control the thoughtfulness and diligence we put into those plans. Now, why is this shift so important? Because when we tie our happiness and sense of self-worth to outcomes, we make ourselves vulnerable to forces beyond our control. When things go our way, we feel good, but when they don't, we feel frustrated, disappointed, or even defeated. And since life is unpredictable, this creates a constant roller coaster of emotions. By letting go of outcomes, we stabilize ourselves emotionally. We cultivate resilience because our sense of peace is no longer dependent on external events, but rooted in our own actions and values. This resilience becomes particularly valuable when things don't go as planned, when we face failure, rejection, or setbacks. Instead of spiraling into frustration or self-doubt, we can step back and say, I did everything within my control, and that's enough. This doesn't mean we don't learn from our experiences. It means that our self-worth is no longer tied to things beyond our influence. To illustrate this point further, let's consider a modern example. Imagine a business owner who has poured their heart and soul into their company. They've worked long hours, made sacrifices, and given their best effort. But due to factors beyond their control, perhaps a downturn in the economy or an unexpected shift in the market, the business fails. From a results-driven perspective, this might seem like a devastating failure. But from a Stoic perspective, The value of the business owner's efforts lies not in the outcome, but in the process, the discipline, resilience, and hard work they demonstrated. These are the true measures of their success. The outcome, while important, is ultimately secondary. The same principle applies to personal relationships. We can't control how others feel about us, whether they'll accept or reject us, or how they'll respond to our actions. But we can control how we treat them. We can act with kindness, integrity, and honesty. And when we let go of the need for a specific outcome, whether it's someone's approval or a particular response, we free ourselves from the anxiety that comes from trying to manage the unmanageable. This isn't to say that we should stop caring about results. Outcomes are still important, and we should strive for success. But Stoicism teaches us that our emotional well-being shouldn't depend on those outcomes. Instead, we should find fulfillment in knowing that we've done our part. We've acted with intention, focus, and effort, and that in itself is a victory. When we let go of outcomes, we also discover something surprising. We become more effective. Why? Because when we're not fixated on the result, we can focus fully on the present moment. We can give our undivided attention to the task at hand, without the distractions of worry or fear of failure. This presence allows us to do our best work, to engage fully in whatever we're doing, and to respond more flexibly to challenges. In a way, letting go of outcomes paradoxically increases our chances of success because it allows us to focus on the process rather than the pressure of the result. So, how do we put this into practice? It begins with a shift in mindset. The next time you face a challenge or pursue a goal, remind yourself, my job is to focus on what I can control. My actions, my effort, my preparation. The outcome is not mine to dictate. This doesn't mean you don't care about the outcome. It means you're detaching your emotional state from it. You're focusing on what truly matters, your own conduct and integrity. Over time, this practice becomes liberating. You'll find that you're less anxious, less frustrated, and more at peace. You'll stop worrying about things you can't change, and you'll start taking pride in the things you can. You'll approach life's challenges with a sense of calm and purpose, knowing that your worth doesn't depend on external validation, but on your own actions. In conclusion, letting go of outcomes doesn't mean giving up on your goals. It means recognizing that the journey is just as important as the destination. It means finding fulfillment in the process, in the effort you put in, rather than in the result. And when we embrace this mindset, we not only free ourselves from anxiety and frustration, but we also open ourselves up to a deeper sense of inner peace and resilience. By focusing on our actions and letting go of the rest, we discover a strength and clarity that carries us through life's ups and downs. Thank you.